Have you ever made a decision so stupid, so absolutely ridiculous, that you had to sit down and have a serious conversation with yourself about your life choices? Well, let me tell you about the time I accidentally became the mascot for a cult. And no, I'm not using the word cult loosely. I mean a full-blown, robe-wearing, chanting at sunrise, we worship the cosmic energy of abundance type cult. My name is Deshaun Carter. I'm 26 years old, and I'm about to tell you the wildest story of my entire life. If you're watching this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because I need to know that I'm not the only person who's ever done something this ridiculous. And trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to understand why my mama stopped speaking to me for 3 whole days. Let me take you back to 6 months ago. I was living in Oakland, California, fresh out of college with a degree in marketing and absolutely no job prospects. I'd sent out maybe 200 resumes and gotten back exactly 3 responses, all of them saying thanks but no thanks. My student loans were piling up, my rent was due, and I was living off ramen noodles and the occasional free meal from my Auntie Diane, who felt sorry for me. I was desperate. And when you're desperate, you start applying for jobs you normally wouldn't even look at twice. That's how I found the listing for brand ambassador and public engagement specialist at a company called Luminous Path Wellness Center. The pay was $800 a week, which sounded like a fortune to someone who had exactly 47 inches his bank account. The job description said I'd be embodying the spirit of wellness and positivity while engaging with community members at various events. I thought it was some hippie yoga studio or health food store. I was wrong. So wrong. The interview was at this huge house in the hills, one of those places that looks like it was designed by someone who watched too much HGTV and had way too much money. I showed up wearing my only suit, the one I'd worn to graduation, and I was greeted at the door by this woman named Crystal. And yes, that was her real name, or at least the name she was going by. Crystal was in her 40s, white lady with long blonde hair that went down to her waist, wearing all white linen and enough turquoise jewelry to open a small store. She smiled at me like she'd been waiting her whole life for me to show up. "Deshaun," she said, pronouncing my name slowly like it was a sacred word. "Welcome to Luminous Path. We've been expecting you." "You have?" I said, confused because I'd just applied the night before. The universe has a way of bringing us exactly who we need, exactly when we need them. "Come, let me show you our space." She led me through this house that smelled like incense and essential oils. There were crystals everywhere, like somebody had robbed a geology museum. We passed by rooms where people were sitting in circles, humming. Not singing, humming. Just sitting there with their eyes closed, humming like a bunch of refrigerators. "What exactly do you all do here?" I asked, trying not to sound as weirded out as I felt. "We are seekers of higher consciousness, Deshaun. We believe that through meditation, clean living, and alignment with cosmic energy, we can transcend the limitations of the material world and achieve true enlightenment." "Oh, cool. I had no idea what she just said, but I needed that $800 a week. Crystal led me to an office where 3 other people were waiting. There was Moonbeam, a 50-year-old white guy with a ponytail, who used to be an accountant before he found the light. There was Serenity, a woman in her 30s who introduced herself by her astrological sign before her name. And there was the leader, a man who called himself the Awakened One, but whose real name I later found out was Gary Henderson from Wisconsin. The Awakened One was wearing white robes and had this long gray beard that looked like he'd been growing it specifically to look wise. He looked at me with these intense blue eyes and said, "Deshaun, tell me, what do you know about sacred geometry?" I'm pretty good at regular geometry." Everyone laughed like I'd said the funniest thing in the world. That should have been my first clue to run, but I was thinking about my student loans and how good $800 a week sounded. "Deshaun has a pure energy," the Awakened One said to the others, "untainted by the commercial world's corruption. This is exactly what we need for the Vessel of Joy position." "The what now?" I asked. Crystal leaned forward. "We need someone to wear our sacred costume and represent Luminous Path at community events, festivals, and gatherings. Someone who can embody pure, unadulterated happiness and draw people to our message." "You want me to be a mascot?" "We prefer the term Vessel of Joy. So a mascot, The vessel of joy is much more than a mascot, Deshaun. It's a spiritual calling. I should have walked out right then. But they offer me $900 a week, not $800, plus free meals during work hours. And y'all, I was hungry, like really hungry. So I said yes. They told me to start the next Monday. When I got home that night and told my roommate Calvin about the job, he looked at me like I lost my mind. Bro, you joined a cult. It's not a cult. It's a wellness center. They got a leader called the Awakened One. People with fake hippie names, and they want you to wear a costume. That's a cult, Deshaun. It's $900 a week, Calvin. That's how they get you. Monday came around, and I showed up at the Luminous Path house ready for my first day. Crystal met me with a huge smile and led me to a back room where the vessel was waiting. She opened the closet, and I saw it. The costume. It was a 7-foot-tall sun costume. Bright yellow, with big foam rays shooting out in all directions, and a headpiece that had a giant smiley face on it. The kind of costume you'd see at a theme park, except this one had crystals glued all over it and smelled like patchouli. This is the sacred solar vessel, Crystal said reverently. You will bring light and joy to all who see you. I stood there looking at this ridiculous costume, thinking about my student loans, my empty fridge, and my mama who kept asking me when I was going to get a real job. And I made a decision that would haunt me for months. When do I start? My first event was at a farmer's market in Berkeley. I put on the sun costume, which was hot as hell and weighed about 30 pounds, and I walked around waving at people while other Luminous Path members handed out flyers about awakening your inner light and transcending material consciousness. Kids loved me, adults were confused, and I was sweating so much inside that costume that I felt like I was melting. But I waved and danced and posed for pictures, and at the end of the day, Crystal told me I was a natural. Over the next few weeks, I became a regular fixture at events all over the Bay Area. Farmers markets, street fairs, outdoor concerts, anywhere Luminous Path could set up a booth and recruit new members. And that's what they were doing, recruiting. I started to notice that the people who stopped to talk to the other members would sometimes show up at the house later, looking dazed and talking about finding their path. Calvin kept warning me, bro, you need to quit that job. They're getting bigger. People are talking about them online. This isn't just some weird yoga studio. They're actually recruiting people into something serious. I'm just wearing a costume, Calvin. I'm not actually part of their beliefs. But you're helping them look legitimate. You're the friendly face that makes people think they're harmless. He was right. But I didn't want to admit it. The money was good. They fed me lunch every day. And honestly, after months of rejection from real jobs, it felt good to be wanted somewhere, even if that somewhere was deeply weird. Then things started getting stranger. The Awakened One announced that Luminous Path was expanding. They were opening centers in 3 other cities, and they were planning a big festival called the Great Convergence, where all their members from across California would come together for a weekend of meditation, workshops, and cosmic alignment ceremonies. And the Vessel of Joy was going to be the centerpiece of the whole event. Crystal pulled me aside one day and said, Deshaun, we need to talk about your role in the Great Convergence. I just wave and dance, right? This is bigger than that. The Awakened One has had a vision. He sees you, the Vessel of Joy, leading a procession of members in a ceremony of ultimate enlightenment. You'll be carried on a platform by 12 devoted members while everyone chants the sacred vows. The what? It's a chant. Just ah, e, ah, oo for about 40 minutes. 40 minutes? It aligns the chakras. Deshaun, don't you want aligned chakras? I went home that night and finally called my mama. My mama, Patricia Carter, is a no-nonsense woman who raised 3 kids by herself while working as a nurse at Oakland General Hospital. She doesn't play games, she doesn't sugarcoat nothing, and she definitely doesn't tolerate foolishness. Hey, Mama, Deshaun Bernard Carter. You know how I know something's wrong? You only call me in the middle of the week when something's wrong. I need some advice. About what? About my job? The one you've been so secretive about? The one you won't tell me details about because you know I'm going to have something to say? Yeah, that one. I told her everything. The wellness center, the costume, the recruitment, the Awakened One, all of it. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. So long, I thought she'd hung up. Mama? You there? Deshaun, baby, my youngest child, who I raised to have good sense, who I sent to college so he could make better decisions than I had to make. Are you telling me you are the mascot for a cult? They prefer wellness center. I don't care what they prefer. You're out there dancing around in a sun costume helping white people recruit folks into their weird organization? Have you lost your natural mind? Mama, I needed the money. You know I needed the money. There's a lot of things people need, Deshaun. That doesn't mean you go out and become the face of a cult. What would your grandmama say if she could see you right now? That hit me hard. My grandmama, Mama's mother, had passed away 2 years earlier. She was the one who always believed in me, who told me I was going to do great things. And here I was, dancing around in a sun costume for people who thought crystals could cure cancer. I know, Mama, I know it's bad, but they want me to do this big ceremony thing and I don't know what to do. I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to quit that job, come home, and we're going to figure out your next move together. Because whatever you think you're getting out of this situation, it's not worth your dignity or your safety. You hear me? Yes, ma'am, but I didn't quit. Not right away. Because 2 days later, Crystal called me with an offer I couldn't believe. They wanted to make me a full-time employee with benefits and a salary of $60,000 a year. For a 6-year-old with student loans and no other job offers, that was life-changing money. I told myself I'd just do it for a year, save up some money, pay off some debt, and then move on to something else. I told myself it was just a job, that I wasn't really part of their beliefs, that I was just an actor playing a role, but Calvin saw through it. You're rationalizing, bro. You know this is wrong, but you're convincing yourself it's okay because of the money. The Great Convergence was scheduled for a Saturday in June at a retreat center in Sonoma County. 200 members were expected to attend, and Luminous Path had been promoting it for weeks. I was supposed to arrive early, get into costume, and be ready for the opening ceremony at noon. The morning of the event, I woke up with this heavy feeling in my chest. I got dressed, grabbed the costume from my closet where I'd been keeping it, and headed to my car. But before I could leave, my phone rang. It was my Auntie Diane. Deshaun, baby, your mama called me. She told me about this job you got. You need to come over here right now. Auntie, I can't. I have to be somewhere. I know where you have to be. And that's exactly why you need to come here first. I'm not asking, baby. I'm telling you, get over here. When you're black and raised right, you don't ignore a direct order from your auntie. I drove to Auntie Diane's house in East Oakland, the same house where I had spent countless afternoons as a kid, eating her, cooking, and listening to her stories. She met me at the door with her arms crossed. Behind her, I could see my Uncle Jerome, my cousin Tasha, and to my complete shock, my mama. They'd staged an intervention. Sit down, Deshaun, Mama said. I sat on the couch, still holding the sun costume bag. Everyone was looking at me like I'd robbed a bank. We're not going to let you do this, Auntie Diane said. We love you too much to watch you make this mistake. It's just a job. It's not just a job, Uncle Jerome said. He was a big man, used to work in construction before he retired. And when he spoke, you listened. These people are using you, nephew. They're using your face, your energy, your blackness to make themselves look diverse and legitimate. And you're letting them do it for a check. You don't understand. I need this money. No, Mama said firmly. You think you need this money, but what you actually need is self-respect. What you need is to look at yourself in the mirror and be proud of what you see. Can you do that right now? Can you honestly say you're proud to be the mascot for people who are taking advantage of vulnerable folks? I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because she was right. Every event I'd worked, I'd seen people get roped into this organization. People who were lonely, who were searching for meaning, who were desperate for community. And I'd been the friendly, dancing sun that made Luminous Path seem fun and harmless. What am I supposed to do? I asked, my voice cracking. I don't have anything else lined up. If I quit, I'm back to being broke and unemployed. You're not going to be alone, Tasha said. She was only 2 years older than me and worked as a paralegal downtown. I can get you an interview at my firm. They need people in their marketing department. It won't be $60,000, but it's something, and it's legal, and you won't have to wear a stupid sun costume. And you can stay with me until you get on your feet, Uncle Jerome added. I got that extra room since your aunt passed. You can stay there rent-free for a few months. I looked around at my family, at these people who had shown up on a Saturday morning to stop me from making the biggest mistake of my life, and I realized something. They weren't just trying to save me from a cult. They were trying to save me from losing myself, from compromising my values for money, from becoming someone I wouldn't recognize. I have to go to the event, I said. Deshaun, Mama started. No, let me finish. I have to go to the event, but not to participate. I need to tell them I'm done. I need to quit to their faces. They've been calling and texting all morning, and if I just ghost them, they're going to keep reaching out. I need to end this properly. Mama looked at Uncle Jerome, then at Auntie Diane. They had a silent conversation in the way that black families do, where whole discussions happen with just eye contact and slight nods. Okay, Mama said, but you're not going alone. We're coming with you. And that's how I showed up to the Great Convergence with my entire family in tow. My mama, my auntie, my uncle, and my cousin all piled into 2 cars and drove up to Sonoma County like we were going to Sunday service. When we pulled up to the retreat center, there were already about 100 people there, all dressed in white linen, milling around with flower crowns and crystals. Crystal spotted me immediately and came rushing over. Deshaun, thank goodness you're here. We were getting worried. Did you bring the vessel? We need to start the ceremony in 30 minutes. I brought it, I said, holding up the bag. But I need to talk to the awakened one first. This isn't really a good time. It's important. She looked at my family, who were all standing behind me like a wall of support, and her smile faltered. Okay, come with me. She led us to a main building where the awakened one was preparing for the ceremony. He was wearing even more elaborate robes than usual, with some kind of light-up headpiece that made him look like a discount Star Wars character. Vessel of joy, he said when he saw me. Are you ready to fulfill your sacred purpose? Actually, Gary, his face changed when I used his real name. The serene expression cracked. I'm here to resign. I won't be your mascot anymore. I won't be helping you recruit people into whatever this is. I'm done. The room went silent. Crystal looked like I'd slapped her. Moonbeam and Serenity, who were also in the room, gasped like I'd committed some kind of crime. You signed a contract, the awakened one said, dropping the mystical voice and sounding very much like a regular dude from Wisconsin. We have a legally binding agreement for at-will employment, Tasha said, stepping forward. I read the contract he signed. He can quit anytime he wants, and if you try to stop him or harass him in any way, we'll contact the authorities about your recruiting practices, your unlicensed medical advice, and the fact that you're running what appears to be an unregistered religious organization that's accepting donations without proper nonprofit status. The awakened one's face turned red. Who are you? I'm his family, and trust me, you don't want these problems. Uncle Jerome stepped forward too, all 6 feet 3 inches of him. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, arms crossed, looking like he was ready to handle business if needed. I reached into the bag and pulled out the sun costume. I dropped it on the floor between us. Find yourself another vessel. I'm out. We walked out of that building together, my family and me, and we didn't look back. I could hear Crystal calling after me and the awakened one saying something about cosmic consequences, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. On the drive back to Oakland, Mama said, I'm proud of you, baby. It takes strength to admit when you're wrong and walk away from something, even when it's hard. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Yes, you should have. But you listened eventually, and that's what matters. Tasha got me that interview at her firm, and I started working in their marketing department 2 weeks later. It was entry level. The pay was only $42,000 a year, but it was honest work. I was helping small businesses with their branding and social media, actually using my degree, and I could look at myself in the mirror without feeling ashamed. Living with Uncle Jerome was different than I expected. He was retired, so he was home a lot, and at first I thought it would be awkward. But he taught me things. How to fix stuff around the house, how to budget properly, how to cook more than just ramen. And he told me stories about my daddy, who he'd known before my parents split up. Your father made a lot of mistakes, Uncle Jerome said one night while we were watching the game. But the biggest one was letting pride keep him from admitting when he was wrong. He'd rather lose everything than say, I messed up. Don't be like that, nephew. There's strength in admitting your mistakes and fixing them. About a month after I quit, Calvin showed me an article online. Luminous Path had been shut down by the state of California. Turns out they'd been accepting donations under false pretenses, and several former members had come forward with complaints about psychological manipulation and financial exploitation. The awakened one, real name Gary Henderson, was facing multiple charges. "You got out just in time," Calvin said, "but I knew it wasn't timing. It was family. It was my mama who refused to let me lose myself for a paycheck. It was my auntie who called an emergency meeting. It was my uncle who offered me a place to stay. It was my cousin who used her connections to get me a real job. It was all of them showing me that I was worth more than I was settling for." 3 months later, I took them all out to dinner at Auntie Diane's favorite restaurant to say thank you. We sat around the table, eating good food and talking loud like black families do, and I realized something. This was wealth. Not money, but this. Having people who love you enough to show up and stop you from making terrible decisions. Having people who see your potential even when you've forgotten it yourself. "I want to propose a toast," I said, standing up with my glass. "To family. To the people who love you enough to tell you when you're being stupid, who support you even when you don't deserve it, and who remind you who you are when you've forgotten. I don't know where I'd be without y'all, but I know it wouldn't be anywhere good. Thank you." "To family," everyone said, raising their glasses. Mama looked at me with tears in her eyes. "That's my baby. That's the Deshaun I raised." Now, I know some of you watching this might be thinking, how did you not see that was a cult from the beginning? And honestly, I don't have a good answer. Desperation makes you overlook red flags. When you're broke and scared and tired of rejection, you'll convince yourself that anything is better than nothing. But that's not true. Some things aren't worth the money. Some compromises cost more than they pay. If you're in a situation right now where you're doing something you know isn't right, whether it's a job or a relationship or any kind of situation, listen to that voice in your head that's telling you to stop. And more importantly, listen to your family when they try to pull you back. They see things you can't see because they're not blinded by desperation or denial. The people who love you aren't trying to hold you back when they question your choices. They're trying to hold you up, trying to keep you from falling into something you can't easily climb out of. Sometimes the intervention feels like an attack, but it's actually a rescue. I learned something important from being the mascot for a cult. I learned that integrity isn't just about big moral decisions. It's about the small choices you make every day, the compromises you allow, the red flags you ignore because it's convenient. And I learned that having people who will stage an intervention, who will show up uninvited to save you from yourself, that's the real blessing. A year later, I'm still at the marketing firm, and I got promoted to a senior position. I moved out of Uncle Jerome's place into my own apartment. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. And every Sunday, I have dinner at Mama's house with whoever can make it, and we talk and laugh and eat good food, and I remember that this is what matters. Tasha loves to bring up the cult story whenever we're around new people. "Oh, you haven't heard about the time Deshaun was a cult mascot?" And I let her tell it, because it's part of my story now, part of the journey that taught me who I am and who I want to be. Last week, I got a message on LinkedIn from Crystal, just a simple, "Hope you're doing well." I didn't respond. That chapter of my life is closed, and I don't need to revisit it. But I did think about all the people who probably got caught up in Luminous Path, who didn't have a family that staged an intervention, who didn't get out in time, and I felt grateful all over again. So here's what I want you to take from this story. First, if someone asks you to be their mascot and they call it a sacred vessel, run. Just run immediately. Second, desperation will make you compromise your values if you let it. Don't let it. And third, the people who love you enough to stop you from making terrible decisions are your real wealth. Honor them. Listen to them. Thank them. And if you're ever in a position where you have to choose between money and integrity, choose integrity every time. Because you can always make more money, but once you lose your self-respect, it's a lot harder to get it back. I'm Deshaun Carter, former cult mascot, current marketing professional, and forever grateful for a family that loved me enough to save me from myself. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. And if you've ever done something stupid that your family had to rescue you from, share it in the comments. Let's normalize admitting our mistakes and celebrating the people who help us fix them. Remember, a job is just a job, but your integrity is forever. Don't sell it cheap. Don't sell it at all. Peace and blessings, y'all. And please, if anyone ever asks you to wear a sun costume with crystals glued on it, just say no. Like this video if it touched something in you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about what it means to be human, to be family, and to choose love even when it's complicated. I'll see you next time.